Well, I'm kind of glad I started on a black screen because I didn't have my mic powered on, so there was no actual anything going on for a few seconds there. All right, let's jump in. Okay. Oh, you know what I just realized? Oh boy, that's loud. I did not turn the media down on this. Do that real quick. Save. Okay. That should be better. Yeah, I did turn the volume down on the other thing. So I had some music here too, because I figured, oh, okay, a little bit of opening music in the first few minutes while I'm talking is perfectly good. Just a little bit of background stuff. On the off chance, well, actually, I'm going to get a drink right now, so for exactly this purpose. There we go. Okay, so this is, of course, our second stream now. I didn't bother. I was going to repost it on Discord and everything. I didn't. I just reposted it on Twitter because I don't want to be bombing every place with notifications either. You know, I don't want to just be posting it over and over and over, streaming, which, you know, I already kind of did in one channel at one point, and somebody was like, you're the only person posting in here, and it's just a layer of this stuff, which was a completely valid criticism. And so now what I do in that particular Discord channel is I delete my previous post before I post a new one. And that way, number one, it refreshes the page and it's not just full of my crap, but it also stops it from being just a complete stream of that. And it makes it so that the link there is not confusing. They can just use the most current link. So anyway, yeah. So I only reposted this to Twitter. So only somebody on Twitter would see it, or if you're a follower, such a terrible word for it. If you are following the channel, what is a better word? If you are a attendee of the channel, a regular channel attendee, better. I just don't like the word follower. If you're a regular channel attendee, then you would have gotten a notification that the stream went live again. So welcome to part 2 of our Wednesday stream. Bit of a streaming note. I don't know what the streaming schedule is going to look like. May do a stream over the weekend. Right now there is nothing planned for tomorrow or Friday. Might do one on the weekend. And then the week after, probably no streams because my mother is actually flying out to visit. So probably not for a little while after that. Or for that next week because she'll be out here. Unless she somehow wants to watch me draw, which I doubt. So probably not a stream next week. But then the week after, there might be... I'm going to try to, if the timing works out correctly, I will aim to do another earlier stream. Because I would like to try when those work to do earlier streams so that people in different time zones don't have to be up at 2 a.m. or whatever to attend them. I mean, I know they can always watch them after the fact on YouTube, but I know a lot of people like the live experience, and I do too. So I'm going to try, again, when it works out, to be able to do something a little earlier for people that are not necessarily in the Pacific time zone, which is a lot of people. Obviously, I can only do that so often. It just doesn't always work out. But, oh, I did manage to get the longer file done in the break time. And so that longer file will now play on when we go into the actual full thing. So I have this file is here. This is about a 5-minute file, which is perfect because usually I babble on for about 5 minutes. So this is a nice background file for this. This is all the same person doing the music, the same whiteboard audio for this. And then when we move over to this one reminds me of Deus Ex, the original video game, a little bit, which is why I like it. Love Deus Ex. So when we move over to the doodling whatever transition, then the longer file will start to play, and at least you won't have to hear that same loop that we were going on with in the first part of the stream. I don't know if I'll thread these together and make them one stream file or if I'll just keep them separate. I'll figure that out later. That's a post-processing problem, so don't worry about it too much. All right, so we're going to let the stream, I think it's going to fade out a bit. The music, oh, there it goes. I think it's fading out. It's fading out a little bit. Yep, going, and we will then use that as a transition point. Oh, I forgot to wait for the fade to finish. Sorry. I forgot it doesn't fade itself out. It's one thing. They don't have a audio transition thing for this software. Not a big complaint, but just something that if anybody happens to be listening from the Twitch Studio Beta team, wouldn't be a bad thing to have as an audio transition where you can have it fade out when you change or do like a crossfade. Just be something nice. Okay, so here we are. I did push the volume down on, okay, make sure the keyboard's off, on this long file. So it should be a little bit quieter than it was last time. Sounds pretty quiet to me. Again, if the volume is off at all, please let me know and I will adjust that. And for anybody interested, the lower left on the Walkman there, you can see that there is the name of the artist who provides the audio. And as I said in my last stream, he does completely royalty-free music that you can use in any project, according to him. So as long as you have a credit, which is why that little piece of tape's got a credit on it. I animated that little Walkman thing earlier for no real reason than I just didn't want to have a static Walkman sitting there. But boy, oh boy, when I say animate, what I consider animation is so jumbled together. It's really pretty ridiculous. But it came out okay. See, I got the little rewind thing happening. So I spent so much time just because I wanted to rewind it and I wanted to make sure that the little reel stopped and then started again properly. Ridiculous amount of time. Anyway, but whatever. Now I have a nice little Walkman that is playing on my channel. So totally worth it. Might change the color or something like that. That is actually the original Walkman colors pretty much. But I'm not sure it really works. I'm probably going to have to freshen that graphic up a little bit. But that is not going to be done tonight. I'm going to continue working on the skull, as you see here. So, I was talking about Quantum Leap in the last part. So I will once again say you should watch Quantum Leap. If you like the original. If you didn't, I don't know. You know what? I would actually be kind of curious what people who were not fans of the original show thought of the new one. It would probably work well, I think. I don't think there's really a need to have seen the previous show. But I would be lying if I said that some of what got me through the first two episodes in particular, which weren't bad. I really wouldn't say they were bad. But they were a little bit of an adjustment because of the way they were formatted. And there was a little bit of expositionitis where, you know, they were doing a lot of exposition dumps. And some of what got me through that was, okay, that they're tying it into the old show, and I really like the old show. But, yeah, if you've never watched the original, and I would say, I mean, I think the new one is only on Peacock. I don't think is it even on NBC? I don't know. I never turned the television. I never turned cable on anymore, so I don't know. The only thing we have cable for is still sports. And I really hope in the next year or two that's not going to be a necessity for that either. But the stupid MLB blackout stuff is just... It's annoying, but it's what it is. And we do like to... My wife likes to watch SF Giants baseball. And so we still have cable. Which is, again, kind of stupid. But I don't really know whose fault that is. That may very well be MLB's fault more. No, it can't be. It's got to be a cable operator thing with that. I don't think MLB, frankly, really cares as long as you're paying for their streaming service where you watch something. So I guess I would have to blame Comcast or Xfinity or whatever they're called now for that one. But I really shouldn't complain too much because I have to say, for all the consumer complaints about Comcast or Xfinity or whatever they're called now, our internet is largely really good. It had a very brief period of massive instability. I'm going to say maybe a month. A year or two ago? Well, maybe, no, was that? No, that was that pre-pandemic? God, I can't even remember now. Memory is just garbage. My memory was always garbage. It's more garbage now that there is no sense of time anymore. But in any event, we had a small period of instability where the internet would kind of fail once a day for a certain amount of time. They did some work on it. But honestly, outside of that, I really, if I'm being objective about it, I can't really complain too much. It largely works very well. So, yeah. But it is sort of dumb to have cable just to watch Giants games. I'm fine because Yankees games are almost never on TV out in California. Therefore, I can pretty much watch my games anywhere, anytime, whether there's cable available or not, because I can stream them. But not with the Giants games. And the thing is, the Giants commentators... All right, we're going to talk baseball a little bit here, so sorry if you don't like baseball. The Giants commentators are stellar. They are really some of the best announcers in sports in general. It really is one of those things where it's not until you hear really bad announcers, kind of like a lot of things in life, that you realize how good some announcers are. It is very evident. The Yankees have an excellent set of announcers, although I'm perhaps not in the majority opinion on that, because John Sterling, he's not the color commentator. What is he considered? Who does the game, the play-by-play calls? He is eccentric, to say the least. And there are people who just don't like that, and they don't like him. But I think he's great. I think him and Susan Waldman, who is the color commentator that works with him, I think they are fantastic. I really do. And John Sterling is not young. He's 80-something, so he is going to be retiring at some point in the near future. So I really don't know who they're going to be able to get to replace him. I would love them to use Ricky Ricardo, who is their Spanish language announcer. He is fantastic. I mean, he filled in for John Sterling when he didn't do some road games a few times this year, I think, at least 2 times. And man, that guy is sensational. So that's why there's no way he's going to actually move over, because they don't want to lose him on the Spanish-speaking channel. He's too good. I'll tell you, I wish I understood Spanish. I'm not kidding. When John Sterling retires, if I was able to speak Spanish with any kind of competency, I would start listening to the Spanish channel just to hear Ricky Ricardo. That's how good he is. The shame, though, is I like Susan Waldman a lot, too, so I wouldn't be able to hear them both. Anyway, this is a very specific first world problem. So I'm complaining about baseball commentators. But where was I going with that? I don't remember. But, because I was talking about it's because I said I didn't know if Quantum Leap was airing on the, NBC on cable, or if it's only on Peacock, because I really don't know. I don't know if it's only streaming. I have no idea. I didn't bother even to look. I could look it up, but I doubt anybody who's listening actually cares. By the way, if you have time, is the sound mix, if you have an opportunity, is the sound mix sound okay? Just let me know, because I don't want it to be blasting. I don't think so. I'm looking at the little meters that are running there, and they appear to show that the music is pretty low. And in my, I was gonna say earpiece, in my earpiece makes it sound like I'm a CIA agent or something. In the earbud, it sounds like it's pretty. I've got it pretty low, but I just don't know for sure how it is on the stream. One way or another, if you can't answer, that's fine. I'll hear it when I pull the streams down to post them, so it's no problem. Again, I don't know if I'm going to merge these into one file, or if they're better off as a 2-parter, separated. Doubt it really actually matters to anybody, but we'll see. So yeah, Quantum Leap, very good. Watch it. I like it. And of course, now we're in October and Halloween, so I'm going to be watching a lot of horror movies. Nice range of them. I actually am very interested in the Marvel Werewolf by Night thing, because from all the reviews I've seen and read on it, it is structured like an old Hammer horror movie. And I just did a Hammer horror movie review. I like old classic horror. Black and white or color really doesn't matter so much. But so that one is in black and white, and apparently is very much in the style of classic horror films. So there's something that Marvel has done that I am legitimately actually interested in watching for once. In recent times, anyway. So I do want to watch that. That will be out in a few days, I think, on Disney Plus, so I can watch it on there. And I saw something where, I don't remember who said that, was Netflix maybe, or Netflix or Disney said they're not going to do physical media releases for some of their stuff, which just is terrible. It's just, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. It's just strange for a number of reasons, because if nothing else, there are people who don't subscribe to those services that would probably buy this stuff on physical release. And the reality is, and I'm sorry, they could say whatever they want, but it just won't be true. Physical media is going to give you a better experience if you have a good home theater setup than streaming will. It just will. Even the best streaming service, and from all accounts that's generally considered to be Apple, even that is not going to beat out a physical media disc. It's just not. No matter what to say. There is no discussion to be had. It won't. Unless you get a really bad... Okay, I should say, if you get a really bad disc, I mean, if they put out a crappy release, if they master it poorly or they encode it poorly or whatever, sure. Yes, if you get a bad transfer or a bad release, yes, then streaming could in theory beat it. For example, the old Predator Blu-ray where the banding on the sky was laughably bad. Yeah, okay, fine, then. But other than that, no, it's not happening. It's really not. Or if for some reason, like this, it's simply not available in physical. So a good example of that would be the Keep, the Michael Mann movie from 1983? 5? I don't remember the year. I think it's 3. That I just watched on the Criterion streaming service, the Criterion channel. And boy, their transfer looked really good a lot of the time. Really good. I mean, there's a movie that should really... I did, I think, a 5 on this where I talked about that movie so deserves to get a proper revisit and re-release by Michael Mann. It's such a... even though it is absolutely true that movie is in an extremely bad state because of the way that the production went, the footage exists. I mean, that footage exists. The original cut was around 3 hours plus. So obviously they had plenty of footage. I have no doubt that a good movie, if not a great movie necessarily, it might not be possible to make a great movie out of it, but I have no doubt a good movie can be made out of it. And if you've never seen The Keep, if you don't take any recommendations of mine at all, go find, I know it's got to be on YouTube in at least 15 different versions, go look up the Molasar smoke effect, which was clearly done practically, and it's so beautiful. It is such a... It's very difficult to properly quantify how magnificent this special effect is. And I just watching it, I marvel at it because it is... There's no... I've never seen... Put it like this. I have never seen a CG smoke effect that is anywhere close to as good as that effect is. And the fact that it's physical, and I have no idea how it was done. I mean, obviously I'm not in special effects. I have a rough sort of concept of how it might have been done, but it is so effective. It is so good and so otherworldly and beautiful and just strange and wonderful that I cannot, even if you don't watch the movie, which the movie is narratively, there's no other way to say it, it is a train wreck narratively because it's clearly a butchered cut. They cut a 3-hour original cut down to 90 minutes, and there are just moments where the narrative leaps and you really don't know why, or things are discussed but you never saw them happen. And, not that that's uncommon, but stuff that really, was probably actually filmed. Or at least should have been. And again, if there's double the footage was the original cut, some of this stuff exists. But the Molasar effect is just, it's fantastic. I mean, without hesitation, I would put it as one of the greatest special effects I've ever seen. Because it is so... Number one, it looks so good in motion. It just looks so good. I mean, Tangerine Dream in the soundtrack. There's a whole bunch of reasons why, even though The Keep is a very, very flawed narrative, very flawed, and that's being probably generous. There are humongous parts of the narrative that are missing or unexplained. But it's still so worth seeing because some of the cinematography is just gorgeous. The effects are fantastic many times. Even little effects, even little things like when some of the German soldiers get killed, the way the effects on them are done. There's just some really, really quality filmmaking that unfortunately is just annihilated in the actual narrative. And it really is. There's huge things that are bafflingly unexplained or underexplained, I should say. There's a point where the narrative just jumps forward. Not literally. There isn't like a time jump. Well, there sort of is. I guess there sort of is. But there's a point where the movie just leaps. Quantum leap. it just lurches into, okay, things have been happening, and you never saw those things happen. You never saw. This isn't really spoiling anything. I don't know. Is it possible to spoil a movie that's narrative doesn't really work? Is that a spoilable film? Whatever. I'll just tell you, spoiler alert, I guess, if you consider this a spoiler, but I don't even know if you can call it a spoiler because the movie just blurts it out at you, so what's the difference if I do? There's a point where these German soldiers, this is a World War II movie, so the Nazis, these German Nazis, come to this little area that has the titular keep, which they don't even really explain why they're there, I don't think. You sort of just infer that it obviously has some kind of tactical value. It looks like a stronghold, so you would assume that maybe they're there just to have a defensive position, although I don't think it's ever really... I don't think it's ever really explained why they're even there. That part I don't really care so much about. I mean, that you don't really have to think much to go, okay, they probably saw this very fortified little area and they decided they just wanted it. It does militarily make some sense from the thimble's worth of knowledge that I have in military tactics. But even I can say, yeah, there's clearly going to be a strategic value in having a gigantic wall that you can have soldiers in that has this little bridge that funnels them into a bridge or into a village that appears to be in this little cul-de-sac area. So there's a point where when they get into the keep, there are these silver crosses. And by the way, stealing the silver crosses, again, if you don't want to watch the movie, go look up Tangerine Dream Stealing the Silver Crosses. Probably the most well-known and well-loved musical track from the film, and the soundtrack, which is stellar top to bottom. I have a version of it. I don't know if there's even an official version of that, but they've put out so many versions of it, I got it from somewhere. I think I purchased it off eBay maybe 10 years ago, something like that. And it's clearly a bootleg that somebody put together, but whatever. It's very good quality, so I don't really care, because there's multiple cuts of the same songs, and some of them are pretty obviously probably somebody taped them off a television or something. Not the greatest quality, but I don't care because the other tracks are good quality. So whoever made this bootleg really had access to some type of good quality versions of the songs. But in any event, they see these crosses, and some of the lower level soldiers, the non-officers, the enlisted men, I guess. I'm really not very clear on how the military works, but my understanding is enlisted men are underneath officers, I think. So if I'm wrong about that, it's because I'm not in the military. So, but in any event, some of the lower level soldiers, the infantry, as opposed to the commanders, I'm pretty sure I know that hierarchy, they think that they're silver, and they're told by the caretaker of the keep, who is what is that actor's name? Morgan Shepherd. He was on Max Headroom. He was the prison warden in Star Trek VI. He was on an episode of Frasier. He played one of the upper muckety mucks in the Empire Club. I've seen him in a lot of things. I know him best from Max Headroom, where he plays Blank Reg, which is a fantastic role. Also Star Trek VI. His voice is extraordinarily recognizable. You hear his voice, you know exactly who he is. Very, very well-known character actor. I think he died maybe within the last decade. I think maybe a little longer. My sense of time completely gone. But in any event, he shows up as the caretaker and then vanishes. I cannot imagine that there was not more to his role that doesn't end up in the theatrical or the final release cut or whatever you want to call that butchering of the movie. But in any event, he says very, very clearly, no, they're not silver. They're in fact made of nickel. And there's really nothing in the film that disputes that. There's no point where the movie seems to contradict what he says. So for all I'm aware of, as far as what the narrative gives us, they are in fact nickel and not silver. But then one night when one of the infantrymen is on watch, he's out front, one of the crosses, kind of the central cross, I guess, it starts glowing, and it's basically supposed to be the monster of the movie is called Molasar, and it is the creature, at least my inference from it, and I think many other people see it the same way, is that the creature is trying to draw them in. So he's making the cross glow, and there's a point where the two infantrymen go up to it, and one of them says, "It is silver, it's silver." But there's really there's no reason to think that that's an informed estimation, because all he does is kind of scratch it. Now, I don't know anything about, I don't know how metal works as far as what you can tell using your finger or a knife from it. I know you can tell some things. Obviously, if you are somebody who's well-versed in metallurgy, I have no doubt that a professional or educated metallurgist, I believe that's a real word, can determine some level of what a metal is by its scratching, the softness, the malleability. It's kind of like, when people like bite a coin and they can tell whether it's real or not. So there's obviously some level of skill there, but there's no point where any of these soldiers there's nothing that is to demonstrate to the viewer that the soldiers can make that distinction based on scratching metal. So I and others, again, because I've seen other people say the same thing, is what my impression is that this was actually the monster or the creature. I don't know if he's really a monster per se, because from what I've read, he was supposed to be a reincarnated spirit of a Romanian aristocrat or something like that, or I guess that's what he was in the book that it's based on. But in any event, whatever is trapped in there behind the crosses, my read is, and many others' read is, that this creature is brainwashing them or making them think that they are being lied to, and then in fact it is silver and not nickel. In fact, I think one of the German soldiers says something like, "Nickel, no, it is silver, not, they told us it was nickel, but it's not," or something like that. So in any event, as you would sort of expect in a film like this, they pull the cross out, which the caretaker, the Morgan Shepard's character, I think he's got an initial somewhere. I don't think it's just Morgan Shepard. I think it's either K. Morgan Shepard or Morgan K. Shepard. He says, don't take the crosses out. Because Jurgen Prochnow, who is the commander of the first group of soldiers that shows up, is supposed to be, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a Nazi. So I don't think you could really say he's a good guy. He never at any point really tries to defect from the Reich or anything, but he's clearly supposed to be presented as not just a straightforward evil Nazi, like the just dyed-in-the-wool, pure evil, no sense of humanity, whatever. They try to give him some depth. They try to make it where he is, it's insane, a phrase that's going to sound like, a more thoughtful Nazi for the time. He actually is reading, I believe the book he's reading is an anti-fascist book. And then when Gabriel Burns shows up as the leader of the SS, it's a real group. It was the worst of the worst or among the worst of the SS. People who would just go into towns and wipe them out type of thing. When he shows up, he and Jurgen Prochnow do not like each other. And Jurgen Prochnow thinks he's unnecessarily cruel, and which the group that he's part of, they are. So he is at odds with him immediately. But where was I going with that? Oh, so Jurgen Prochnow, he is told by the caretaker, don't take the crosses out. They take the crosses out, and sure enough, Molasar, the creature, monster, trapped soul, whatever, emerges from the keep. And of course, the keep was meant to keep, is a prison to keep Molasar in, as opposed to, as the German soldiers were first thinking, a defensive position to be able to repel forces that were trying to invade. No, in fact, this is an elaborate prison, a magical prison to contain a supernatural force. And so Molasar escapes and starts, getting rid of all the German soldiers. And at first does so representing himself to a prisoner who was brought there, played by Ian McKellen, who you probably know as Gandalf and many other roles, Magneto perhaps from the X-Men. When he and his daughter are brought there, Molasar, oh wow, it just jumped to 100% CPU. Wow, hasn't done that in a while. Interesting. Well, I guess they haven't totally fixed that then. Let me restore that really quick. I actually saw it when it jumped out. So when Ian McKellen encounters Molasar, Molasar makes it seem like he is there to stop the Nazis from basically wiping out the Jews, because that's kind of what's going on. That's what the German soldiers are doing in other places. So, So there is a misdirect, I think, although again, not handled well in this version of the movie, where you might think that Molasar was in fact a not a hero, but not necessarily evil, I guess is the way to put it. And then you find out, of course, that he is, that it is. Again, this is the part where the movie really does start to kind of crumble in terms of narrative, because when Molasar gets released somewhere else, I think it's supposed to be in Greece. I think I say Greece. Scott Glenn suddenly wakes up and his eyes glow, and eventually we come to find out that he is in fact a opposing positive force against Molasar's evil. And so he basically, as soon as he wakes up, he's like, uh-oh, Molasar's awake, gotta get there, and starts, making his way to Romania, where the Carpathian Mountains, I think is what they say in the opening, something like that. So he makes his way over there, and to have this big showdown with Molasar, which unfortunately, because of all the production problems and everything that went on, the special effects supervisor died while post-production was happening. Michael Mann, the director, couldn't make up his mind on what he wanted to do with some parts of the narrative and how the monster was going to be displayed. The monster looks vastly different in some shots. Not inconsistently so, but does look very different at times. And so the ending is a very, very messy affair where Scott Glenn shows up and basically puts together a cosmic flashlight and flashes it at Molasar and destroys him, or yeah, I think he's destroyed. I think something happens to him and he goes away. And then Scott Glenn's character is kind of very similar to what happened in, of all things, Tron Legacy, where when Flynn reabsorbs Clue, he himself is destroyed as part of the reabsorption process. That's kind of what happens with Scott Glenn's character in Molasar when Scott Glenn dispatches Molasar. And I don't think we ever see the destruction of the creature, but you just see kind of laser beams, and I don't think Molasar actually is shown. I don't remember a scene where he disintegrates or anything, so he could have just been banished to some nether region, I don't know. And then Scott Glenn is sucked into one of the openings in the keep wall, and you're meant to think that, and then there's a freeze frame ending, which is just really strange, with Ian McKellen's daughter in the film. And so, as far as we know, Scott Glenn is either trapped with Molasar in whatever prison he's been put back into, or has been annihilated along with Molasar in general. Again, kind of a Tron Legacy thing where the destruction results in both parties being destroyed. I don't really know. It's unclear. But that's what I mean about the narrative really does fall apart. Still, having said all that, which I've now talked about the keep for about 30 minutes, or no, probably about 25 minutes, but still. I'm not going to review it on the show because I've talked about it before, but whatever, I can talk about it on stream because I just watched it, so I don't really care. Even with all those problems, even with and let me tell you something, some of what I'm explaining as a narrative is clearer than the film. Trust me when I tell you. That is not much of an exaggeration. It really isn't. So the production is extremely bad in terms of it is obviously a only partially finished movie. It's very clear that the editing was done in either a very quick or an unsupervised fashion. I mean, it's Michael Mann almost doesn't even talk about this movie at any point outside of to say how bad the production was and that it was a mess. In fact, and I don't know if this is really true, but it comes up as a trivia point. This may be true, it may not. That the experience of this terrible experience is what drove him to try to go to television and make Miami Vice. Now, if in fact that is true, and not just apocryphal kind of, oh, it's kind of cute trivia to go from A to B. Assuming that is actually true, it's worth the train wreck of the movie if it got us Miami Vice, because Miami Vice is spectacular. So, but I mean, if Warner Brothers gave Zack Snyder however many millions to finish Justice League of all films, somebody's got to give Michael Mann $10 million and some time to make the Keep cut, you know, that he, at least as much as he, try to improve it somehow. Even if you can't fix it, do an assembly cut type of thing like they did with Alien 3. Something. Because no matter what the problems with the narrative, no matter those problems, and those problems exist. I'm not papering over the fact that narratively, I listened to a podcast with Quentin Tarantino that he does, and he called The Keep a fiasco. I think that's being a little bit harsh, but I understand where he's coming from. I mean, in terms of the narrative, it is not ideal. But even so, when you watch this thing, if you watch this thing, and you can find it on YouTube in not great quality, or you stream it on Criterion. Amazon had it for a while. It's around. It's around in good quality, which is sort of like, okay, because it's not available on Blu-ray. It's only available on DVD or VHS. You can go find it. And some people have uploaded, I've seen the TV cut, which does change the ending, where Scott Glenn actually lives and comes back as a mortal man, I believe. And there's some allusion to that in some of his conversations, that's probably where the movie intended him to be. Whatever, not clear on whether Michael Mann didn't like that ending or not, but there's a point where he says something about, you know, mortals can experience something I can't, type of thing. And so the ending of the TV version makes it seem like his victory over Molasar has resulted in him becoming mortal. Kind of a there's another movie where that happens, where when somebody wins they become mortal. Geez, what am I thinking of? Well, whatever, it doesn't matter. Oh, kind of Superman 2, where Superman renounces being Superman, or, you know, gives up his powers and steps into the magic chamber so that he can experience mortal life with Lois Lane. Because all he wants is to be with Lois Lane, and he's in love. And for some reason, well, I guess because if he stayed Superman, he wouldn't age and she would, type of thing. You know, so he forsakes his Kryptonian powers to be with Lois Lane. So something like that. Which I think is perfectly serviceable. I have no problem with that. It's supposed to be, Michael Mann has described it as an adult fairy tale. And that's a fairy tale ending, is that having vanquished the creature, the reward for the hero is to get his wish, which is to be mortal, or be a normal human being. I'm fine with that. I don't think that's a terrible ending for it. Some people may disagree, but I think it's perfectly fine. But in any event, if you're going to give Zack Snyder all this money to finish that movie, then certainly you could spare, I don't know who owns the rights now, I have no idea who has that movie, but somebody could, well, I mean, maybe Michael Mann doesn't want to do it. That's possible. I don't know if he's completely opposed to ever doing that. I really hope not. I would hope that he would understand that there is a very serious fan base for the movie. I would count myself among that fan base, because like I said, even with the problems, it's a movie that I watch every couple years, because I have a copy of it that I bought that's actually pretty good. I mean, it's a DVD, so it's not as good as the Criterion version, but even in that not ideal state, for a movie that's not in an ideal state anyway, I still really enjoy watching the movie, even with all of its problems. And it has problems, but astonishingly, Criterion included it in their 80s horror playlist that they put on their channel. So I did. When I saw it there, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch that. Like I said, it's a pretty good copy. It looks like it's been color graded. It looks like a fairly good copy, like this, that there's been some cleanup work to it, because there were some scenes that were extraordinarily clear from what I remember. Certainly the copy I've got, which is definitely muddier, doesn't have as good of the color grading, and even the clarity is, I mean, obviously DVD, this has got to be a 1080p transfer, maybe a 2K scan. It's hard to say. But in any event, certainly better than I'm used to seeing it. So I would say, in whatever form, I definitely would still recommend watching it, because I do think that even in its extraordinarily compromised state, there is an artistic beauty and merit to seeing the movie. And just don't worry too much about the narrative, necessarily gelling. You'll be fine. Just saying, it's got some problems. But I'll take an imperfect film like this over a overly safely crafted movie, which is typically what we get now, movies where there is not that much imagination, there is not that much of an actual artistry or an artist's imprint on it. We've got plenty of that, and that's fine. I'm not saying that stuff shouldn't exist. General entertainment, popcorn films, as some people call them, perfectly fine. I enjoy him too. I watch that stuff, you know. But then you get a movie like this where you sit there and go, wow, this is something special. I think when I talked about it, either on I did a 5 saying I think this movie should get revisited. I think either in that one or in some other context when I talked about The Keep, I said, you know, this is a kind of what Ridley Scott did with Legend, where it's that type of movie. Legend, by the way, a very good example of this type of movie, where that's definitely, it is a fantasy film that is geared for a more adult audience. And boy, what a masterful performance by Tim Curry and I don't remember what the devil's name is. He's got a name. I don't remember what it is. It's kind of like his name's Darkness or something like that. Just the general idea of evil. Oh boy, Tim Curry, great actor, great actor. To have 2 roles, I mean really 3, because if you count Pennywise, but that's I think considered a TV movie as opposed to cinema. But to have Rocky Horror, the demon from Legend, and Pennywise, most actors don't get to do that in their whole life. Is have one. I mean, you know, like Anthony Hopkins with Hannibal Lecter. It's that level of a thing with Tim Curry. Tim Curry's great, great actor. I mean, even in small stuff where he pops up for 2 seconds, Tim Curry is always a delight. He's one of those actors where I generally, even in, there's some terrible, well-known movie he made, some low-budget thing where he's playing like a wizard or something. Terrible movie. Pretty much unwatchable outside of him. But even in stuff like that, Tim Curry always looks like he's at least having a good time. Oh, Clue. Also very good in Clue. As the butler. Lots of stuff. Tim Curry's one of those people. Tim Curry pops up in something that I know I'm going to have a good time. He's one of those reliable actors. You know? So I always like watching a Tim Curry movie, even if it's not necessarily a great film. But, you know, Hunt for Red October, he pops up for 2 seconds. He's all over the place. The Shadow, he pops up. You know, again, not a tremendous role, but a fun one. Looks like he's having fun being a very hammy, kind of classic, old-style villain when he's fighting the Shadow. Really love The Shadow. Great movie. Not a lot of people agree with that either. A lot of people see that as a lesser superhero film. I disagree. I think if you like The Shadow, the Russell Mulcahy Shadow movie is a fantastic film. Not saying it competes with some modern... Actually, I'm going to throw that statement out. It absolutely does compete with some modern stuff, and that surpasses it. What am I saying? It's a great movie. It's a very fun movie from a... You know, it's a different type of superhero movie. Whether you want to call it a superhero film is somewhat debatable, but he does have a... Well, you know, they don't really... I don't know if they define his powers as supernatural, but he's got mind control, so... I don't know, I'd call that a superhero film because he is supernatural. But I also like the fact, I mean, he's, for those who don't know The Shadow at all, because he's a very old character, he doesn't pop up in much these days. But he is essentially one of the templates that Batman came from. He is very clearly one of the superhero archetypes that Batman is based on. There's a lot of similarities in the character and the characterization of the Shadow and Batman. In fact, in the comics, they've met a few times, which is a wonderful pairing, when done correctly. But the Shadow is a very classic, old-style kind of pulp. You know, started off as radio stories, and I think that was mostly where he was. There have been comics over the years, but just a very, very effective, simple character. You know, very striking in terms of visuals, but very simple. Just very simple design. You know, that basically a trench coat, this very wide-brimmed hat, this red scarf that goes across his face when he transforms. The fact that he's not a perfect character. In fact, he's a very flawed character, which I like about him. But definitely kind of an older style. But that movie's good. Older style type of villain. And that the film is... Sam Raimi has famously wanted to make a Shadow film for a long time, and was apparently going to make one, and when he couldn't, that became Darkman. Now, I am actually curious how much of Darkman changed to avoid being the Shadow. I like Sam Raimi. Let's be very clear about this up front. I like Sam Raimi. what his Shadow movie would have been like. Would it have been a better adaptation than what Mulcahy did? I don't know, because I really like a lot of the stuff, a lot of the decisions that Mulcahy makes, and a lot of the way the film functions, I think are extremely good for the Shadow. Would Sam Raimi have done it better? I'm not going to say he wouldn't have, but there are cases when you hear about directors who could have gotten films and you go, the movie we got was not good, and this person would have done a far better version. I don't know that applies with The Shadow. I think The Shadow is a very, very well-made film, and a film that is effective in what the character is, even with the person that we got. I don't necessarily mind, or I don't have too much regret over the fact that Sam Raimi didn't get it. Now, sure, I would love to see Sam Raimi at some point get rights to the character or be able to make his version of it. I think it'd be fascinating and interesting. I think Sam Raimi's a good filmmaker. I like his stuff. But am I really all that upset that we didn't get Sam Raimi's Shadow at the time? No, I think it turned out all right. I think I still really like that movie. Oops. I looked up as I did that line, which I shouldn't have done because I thought maybe the screen, it looked like it maybe had winked out. So I don't have too many regrets over the Shadow that we got. I really don't. I think we got a fun version of a character that I really like. Very classic comics kind of, black and white morality type of thing. But not really, because, again, the Shadow as a character is not supposed to be a clean-cut person. He's not supposed to necessarily be heroic. In fact, in some ways, the fact that his face changes is a reflection of the monstrosity that's inside himself, because he was a bad person. He was a bad guy. And the Shadow persona and his fight against crime is a type of penance. Now, that's modified a little bit over the years. They've sort of retconned pieces of that. But one of the things that I like is that a lot of the newer comics actually preserve the fact that he's not supposed to be a nice guy. That, you can't completely just erase your evil deeds and your actions. They are, in fact, something that it's a progressive work to try to become a good person. And even so, it doesn't erase terrible acts that have been done. And that is partially why his face becomes this very craggy, kind of ugly visage when he's the Shadow. That is, in fact, part of the dark part of his soul that cannot be cleaned. I like that stuff. I think that's good. But don't get me wrong. In the old stories, he was presented as definitely not as evil as other people. I guess that's accurate. I guess he really isn't supposed to be. It's just interesting because where a lot of these types of stories would have the main character have some kind of noble revelation, something that made them want to be good. The Shadow doesn't really have that. At least not the versions I'm familiar with. The versions I'm familiar with, he is forced to become a good person. And in fact, the movie version has that same thing where he's perfectly fine being an evil guy for a while, and then he is essentially kidnapped and forced to reform. But it's not like he sought it out. And he still at times is at war with his more evil urges and nature. I think that's really compelling. I think that's actually a very good way to do the character, is to say, okay, no, he's not, he's not somebody who just decided one day that evil's bad and I want to be a good person. No. He was dragged into essentially feigning goodness as a forced act of attrition. I like that. Or atonement. I don't know if attrition is the right word there. But I think that's neat. Actually, that's a unique aspect of the character. And I think it's far more powerful than what we often get, which is, the traditional anti-hero model, which is somebody's a bad person. And then, you see this a lot with movies, particularly with like Hitmen, that type of thing, where, one day somebody told him to shoot it's like the Replacement Killers. Somebody said shoot a child, and that was a bridge too far, and now he's a good guy. Okay, don't get me wrong, I like the Replacement Killers. It's a fun movie. But it's a ridiculous idea that suddenly Chow Yun-Fat's character is now a good guy because, hey, Jürgen Prochnow in that movie. Unexpected connection. Was not playing to make that particular 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon leap, but we got there. So, that's a little ridiculous. That's where I like the Shadow a little bit more, because the Shadow is probably more typical of most people, that you can, you know, a lot of people, I think, feign goodness as opposed to actually being good. And that's what the shadow is. He's being forced to be good because, you know, he's not actually good, but there's a point where he sort of falls into it and it becomes a habit, which is also kind of an interesting idea, that, you know, a person practicing being a good guy is doing it more out of habit than, again, an inherent, innate goodness. I think that's interesting. Well, I was going to try to aim to finish this, but my hand's cramping up on me a little bit, so that's fine. I mean, I've been streaming for quite a while now. This is a pretty long stream, and secondly, especially as the second part. So I think I'm going to draw to a close here. We're getting close on this. This was the biggest part, these ridges. So everything after this should not take as long. But I like where the skull's going. I actually really like the ridges, and I think I'm going to leave the white areas, the clean parts of the bone, just empty. I have a feeling that's where I'm going to end up. But it's going along well. I really do like this skull. Don't know where he's going to ultimately end up. He or she, I really don't know. I don't know where Scully here is going to... Scully, like X-Files. I don't know where Scully's going to end up, but I'm digging the journey to whatever that final destination is. So let me switch back to here, which is going to be an abrupt shift. Yeah, it's just the way it's going to go. Yeah, I wish they had an audio transition there. But in any event... I'm glad the music's working. I'm glad the app now appears to be fixed, and it is correctly mirroring the iPad, which is a huge relief, because I really had to engineer a very terrible solution to make it work otherwise. So I'm really, really happy that that was fixed quickly, because I was not thrilled about having to do that kind of cover-up of the weird way the mirroring was working. So hopefully they don't break it again. But like I said, I got to give credit where it's due. It is now working. After another small update, from what I could tell, it wasn't really a major update like the first one was. So they must have figured out that there was something going on and fixed it pretty simply. Okay, well, I've talked for a long time now, so I'm going to shut up at this point and say that wherever and whenever you are, I hope you have a wonderful rest of whatever it is for you. Thanks for stopping by and watching the stream, and we'll see you again on the next one. All right, take care.